Hey everybody, this is Perch. Quick mail here. It says, "Hey Perch, I liked your video on X-Men comics and what you were liking, what you weren't liking. I was hoping you could do something similar for the Absolute Universe and Ultimate Universe with DC and Marvel, respectively. Curious to hear your thoughts on these comics and who you think is winning the current PR war." All right, fair enough. We can do that. Ultimate Comics and Absolute Universe. So the Ultimate Universe has been going on for a little longer. So they have the benefit of having kind of more comics under their belt, a little bit more maturity. They're starting to build on. They're able to build on the lore. Like for example, in the Ultimates just went and attacked the Hulk in his area, and the Hulk just beat the shit out of them and kind of wiped the floor with the team. And so you're able to kind of build up, from there. You're able to, take this team coming together, and you're not doing things for the first time. So there's some advantage to time. But so let's go through the comics. We can do Ultimate first, and we'll go to Absolute. So Ultimate Spider-Man. I generally like the comic. I like the premise. I like the art. It feels, and this is kind of going to be a recurring theme for almost all the comics I talk about today, both companies. The decompression is too much. They are the comic needs to move along faster than this. And I think while they're setting the stage and telling the story and getting us all comfortable with the supporting characters and all the various things involved, this comic needs to kick it into the next gear. It is going too slow. There's too much time devoted to a dinner or kind of cutesy dialogue between Uncle Ben and Jameson. It's not bad, and I think the dialogue is well written and it's good, but it has a little bit of the feeling of when Bendis started to get out of control with his dialogue and kind of the decompression he was doing. It's starting to feel that way, and so Hickman needs some big moments in this book fast. The Chichetto art is very good. I think there's good parts to this, but this book needs to move it along. It's going way too slow. Ultimate Black Panther, I'd say generally have been enjoying, although that one has like good moments that go for a little while, and then it seems to derail itself to some extent. It seems to not be a consistent book. You have a couple issues that go well, and then a couple issues that seem to very little progress is being made. At this point, again, it needs a focus. It needs some kind of inciting event. It needs a moment in the story where the plots are brought together. There's some kind of resolution to some of them. We're able to centralize and then kind of move into, to just kind of move into the next page and get going. I think that's probably where this title is suffering a little bit of if it just, there's been some world building. I think the Ra and Khonshu kind of concept and that being the antagonist here, I think is clever. I think some of what they've done with Killmonger and Storm. I think there's a lot of good elements to the story, but we need some moment where the plots come together and there's it has a little bit of the until next time feel to it that needs to be resolved. I think that's the issue I have with that book, but generally enjoying it. Let's see what else we got. We got Ultimate X-Men. Generally, I mean, I'm hot and cold on this book. It's different. It's pretty. It is in some cases, and I'm not going to be a stickler over this because I don't really care what they call it. It could be called Ultimate New Mutants, and I think everybody would get what it is better than Ultimate X-Men. I think there is a little bit of it's telling a manga story. And I think the only awkward part about it is the Ultimate Universe is so, they're trying to drive to the maker is coming back and how are these plot lines going to come together and everything else. And you can see it for all the other comics, how these things come together, but not this one. This one feels like it's off in its own little land. And so the story it's doing is good, but if you come into it expecting either the X-Men or expecting heavy connections into the rest of the Ultimate books, then it feels super off. I guess is the best way to put it. We got Ultimate Black Panther, Ultimate Spider-Man, then the Ultimates. The Ultimates itself. The Ultimates, I'm not as negative about this book as a lot of others are. because I think you see some elements in it that are correct and right. I think that, the story of how Reed Richards became Doctor Doom was a good central story. I think the attack on what Kunlun, or where they attacked the Hulk and kind of his allies, I think was it's bringing the bigger action, so that's good. But there's a little bit too much of this book as well. It's interesting actually. The conceit of the Maker is trapped for 2 years, and how this threat is going to reemerge, and the people's got to be ready, and all that kind of stuff. I think it felt like a good idea on paper, but in execution, what it's done is it that combined with a lot of the comic writers doing decompression storytelling, I think it's set up a really weird dynamic in these books. And I think the Ultimate suffers from this because it's like, are they assembling the team? Are we world building? Are we seeing kind of what happens to She-Hulk in this area? What are we doing? There's a lot. There's parts of this book that it just doesn't. I have a feeling like 5 issues from now, because we're going to get the Ultimate Guardians of the Galaxy, we're getting the Ultimate America Chavez. We're just like, I have this feeling like 6 issues from now, we're going to be like, and here is the Ultimate Defenders. And it's like, is this a book that's meant to be introducing a bunch of bit characters, or is this a book that, is preparing for the Maker? Is this the central book of the Ultimate Universe, or what the fuck is this book? I mean, there's just an element of it that's goofy. On top of that, I think some of the dialogue and there are elements of this book where it feels like the writer is like still under the impression that it's 2016 and you need to make little nods. Every time the book kind of leans into what I'd call, yesterday's storytelling. It's like that's a time when the book gets really eye rolling, because it doesn't. It's not new. It's not original, and you're just not sure who Denise Camp is trying to impress in this instance. It's just I think the intention of the Ultimates is this is meant to be kind of the centerpiece book of the whole universe, and this is where the big moments are going to happen in preparation for the big overarching storyline. Ultimate X-Men is barely going to tie into it. Black Panther a little more. Spider-Man a little more. But what has actually happened is, because of the Peter Parker MJ kind of restoration of the marriage and the children, the Ultimate Spider-Man is the center book of this entire universe. Ultimates is kind of there trying to kind of fight for attention. And then Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate X-Men are kind of doing their own thing. So it's the whole line. There's some good stories in there, but the Ultimate line to me at Marvel feels really uneven. It feels like, I like it's just hard to understand. Are we telling new kind of unique stories within this universe that kind of get their own attention in their own space, and that's what it's supposed to be? Or are we getting a cohesive plot? It's not clear what the point is. And I think for an imprint and for a lineup, you're either doing a big overarching story or going to really lean into unique stories. So this is where Ultimate X-Men is probably doing a great job of being its own little unique story. And if you like manga storytelling and you like that kind of comic, then it's probably scratching that itch, and it's doing a great job. If you are not into, if you're there because you're hoping the comics are all going to kind of converge into one, like we've seen in the past with the Ultimate line and other books, then you're probably super confused and maybe a little frustrated. Overall, though, all the books, in different ways, probably Ultimate X-Men the least of them, because of the type of story is being told. All of them are just taking their time a little bit too much, some more than others. And the comic needs to move the ball. Over in DC, in the Absolute Universe, I think we have 3 titles out at this point. We have Superman, we have Wonder Woman, we have Batman. Let's see. So Ultimate Batman, this is my favorite of the bunch. I think this is probably the strongest title. I mean, if you're looking at 2 universes, I think Ultimate Spider-Man is probably the best written, and Absolute Batman is probably the best written of the crew. I think that Absolute Batman's doing a pretty good job. I think that that is kind of, I think this title is made or break breaks by the act 2 of the series? Is it going to we've learned a lot about Bruce and about Batman. We've seen the differences and the similarities. We've learned a little bit about and there's still stories that you can tell, but I would hope we don't spend a lot more time on that. We pretty much got it at this point, so we can kind of move into the next gear of this story. And I think we need to see that. And so hopefully that's what we're getting, hopefully, in the next couple issues. But generally, the stories feel like there's a lot of comic when you buy the issue, which is kind of a weird compliment, but it just means when you buy the comic, it doesn't feel like 5 seconds later you're done with the comic and it's over, and as opposed to one of its counterparts, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it actually feels like there's some substance there, and the comic is trying to do some stuff, and I think the Nick Dragotta art is really good. And generally, I think this is one of the stronger books, probably of the two. I think this book's a little bit better than Ultimate Spider-Man, in the sense that this book is, but it's early. It's not a fair comparison. Ultimate Spider-Man needs to stop with the decompression, actually move some things along, and okay, great. We've got a sense of the personalities. Now you gotta, we actually have to put some points on the board. Absolute Batman's putting points on the board, but you're just kind of hoping that we're free and clear of a lot of the Bruce origin, within a month or two. We're good. So let's see him in action more. But generally, there's some good sequences, and I think it's drawn well. Ultimate Wonder Woman is the book that a lot of people like, and I am not a big fan. I'm not getting it, and so I'm not. I mean, every book has things for different tastes, but Ultimate Wonder Woman, it's like that one is almost the exact inverse of Ultimate Absolute Wonder Woman. That one is kind of the opposite of Absolute Batman in that one feels like, they really need to take 3 issues, and that's the first issue. And it's just that one's like very little is happening. And we're getting some of her background. And I mean, some of these moments are interesting, but it reads too quick, and it feels, I'm a little concerned that it's got this feel to it this early in the series. And so I'm when we get into Act 2, I'm curious how that's played off, because right now I think we've the challenge with with both Ultimate and Absolute lines is the big gimmick is, look how the characters you've known your entire life are now different. And so the real question of how successful these books are going to be, or how much we're going to enjoy them, is once you get past the shock of and now their characters are different, what's there, what's the story, what's actually happening. And I think if you look at Absolute Batman, you see that they are, we're constructing a mystery, and we're moving along into the adventure, and we're going to see how things go. If you look at, say, the Ultimates, there's been a few issues like that where it's like, but a lot of it is more like, hey, let's see how, American Chavez is different in this universe. Now let's see how the Ultimate Nullifier and the Guardians are different in this universe. Now let's see how Reed Richards is different in this universe. And it's like, okay, but don't forget the plot. We can't just show that things are different here as the main plot. And so I think with Wonder Woman, I'm just missing some substance there, and I'm missing some sense that there's a bigger comic. Full disclosure, I mean, I'm not a fan of Kelly Thompson, but in her defense for this book, we're not getting that many Kelly Thompsonisms in this book. We're not getting cutesy animals like, let's have a land shark. It's more or less they're sticking to the plot. It just feels like this book is kind of junk food. There's not much there. Which brings us to the last one, which is Absolute Superman. Absolute Superman feels like the one that there's story there. I'm not a big fan of kind of the twist that they're doing. I also think they're making a bigger deal out of things that don't matter. Like in this one, Kal-El's parents are poor. It's like, I mean, okay, sure, that's a difference, but it doesn't. And I think the second issue, which I just read, where he's kind of engaging with Lois, and Lois is going to write for the first time. This one feels, I'm missing the magic of the story in this one. It just feels a little bit too much like we're getting, let's introduce Lois, and Lois is an antagonist, but she's falling for him, and she likes his spirit, and it just, I don't know. I'm having trouble not reading this and remembering Grant Morrison's run on Superman, because there's a lot of similarities in my mind to it. And I'm waiting for the real difference. Like with Absolute Batman, it feels like there's a real difference to the way the story is going to be constructed and going. In fairness, even though I don't like the pacing, Absolute Wonder Woman feels like there's a real difference, and we're going to see how that plays out. With Absolute Superman, it's like the difference feels more shallow. It feels more like, hey, we've tweaked a couple things, but yeah, he's a misunderstood alien and the government's after him. And it's like, nah, all right, we've seen this before. Like, unfortunately, this new and bold, different Superman is one that we've seen presented in, in stuff Frank Miller has done and stuff that DC has done in Elseworlds comics. I mean, I'm forgetting what was the Elseworlds DC comic where they rescued Superman and he had been trapped in a prison for a long time and kind of was sickly, and but you start fucking things up. I can't remember which one that was. I should remember that. Anyway, so that's my take. Overall, I think Absolute probably has more buzz at this point. Ultimate Universe, the way to get buzz is you got to do something as a collective line. You've got to actually do something significant and interesting, and not just have you met the Ultimate Nick Fury? You're about to. It's like, okay, I'm super. Thanks. With Absolute, the Absolute Universe, it does feel like we're getting more. At the moment, it feels like we're getting more of a differentiated universe, and so that's providing more storytelling opportunities. But I gotta see Wonder Woman, give us a real story with substance, and Superman needs to do something that we haven't seen before, that is significant, and so we'll see. So what are you liking, Ultimate or Absolute Universe? Let me know in the comments below. What's the good and the bad of each one? That's my take on it. You will have a different opinion. That's totally, absolutely, 100% fine. Thanks for listening.